Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 190. As always, I'm your host, James Shotwell, and it is great to be with you again. I also have to say that it's a little crazy to think that we are just 10 episodes from the big 200. I never thought we'd get here, and I am so thankful for your support. It really means the world, and I'm working hard to make sure that every episode we have in the future is as good as it can possibly be, starting with this week. My guest is none other than George Reagan, otherwise known as Johnny Three Tears from the group Hollywood Undead. Now, say what you will about where Hollywood Undead falls in the echelon of alternative groups, alternative hip-hop groups, scene groups, whatever you want to classify them as. Here are the facts. For more than a decade and a half, Hollywood Undead has been recording original material that is boundary-pushing, genre-blurring, and winning over listeners all over the globe. The group has platinum plaques, they have gold plaques, they have sold-out shows on 4 different continents, and they show no signs of slowing down anytime soon. On February 14th, Hollywood Undead will release New Empire Volume 1, the first in a 2-part series that will share a total of 18 songs with fans. And having heard the first 9, those available on Volume 1, I have to say that I think this is the group's strongest material to date. You know, Hollywood Undead is no longer the boys that started this group. They have become men, they have families, they have completely different lives. But they've never lost sight of what always made this group so interesting. And that was seeing a group of men who seem, tough in a lot of ways, sharing their feelings, sharing their insecurities, sharing their fears. And not only doing that, but thinking and working towards ways through it. They don't just ruminate on sadness. They look for silver linings. They look for a way through it. They understand that the best way to deal with pain is to go through the pain, to let yourself feel it and move on. And that's what their music teaches us. And that's what George and I talk about a lot in this podcast. We also talk a little bit about Hollywood Undead's blossoming marijuana business, how it got started, and all the hurdles involved in trying to bring a business like that to the market. And we talk about staying power. Something that we're really fascinated with here at Inside Music, especially as of late, are these groups who really kicked off in the 2000s in a big way and have made that career last now over a decade and a half as we reach the 2020s, and who are in many ways are still going strong, if not stronger than ever. Hollywood Undead is one of those groups, able to sell out shows all over the world and release music that people are eager to consume. So George tells me a little bit about how the group has managed to do that and how they've outlasted so many of their genre peers. But before we get there, I need to tell you a few quick things. First and foremost, this episode of Inside Music and every episode of the show is brought to you by Holix, the industry standard for music promotion. Now, what this means is that Holix works with record labels and artists to share new and unreleased music with tastemakers, influencers, critics, and the sort. You can join Holix today and begin promoting your music through the same service used by Grammy winners Tool, Slipknot, Killswitch Engage, Niall Horan, Tanya Tucker, and thousands more by visiting Holix.com. That's HAULIX.com. If you go there and click on the sign up button in the upper right hand corner, you will get your first month of service absolutely free at no cost to you. So visit Holix.com today and sign up. I also want to ask that you check out our YouTube channel. It's called Music Biz. That's Music B-I-Z. We post tutorials, news headlines, and all sorts of information related to the music industry. And also, for what it counts, you get to see me in person. You get to see what I look like and put a face to this voice. So visit youtube.com/musicbiz today and subscribe. And finally, be sure to pick up New Empire Volume 1, the brand new album from Hollywood Undead, when it arrives on February 14th. Okay? You're going to do that? I'm counting on you to do that because it's a great release and I don't want you to miss it. So please do that. But for right now, just sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with the one and only Johnny Three Tears.
I just actually flew into Nashville this morning.
Okay.
Some more stuff.
Yeah.
Bro.
How is the weather in Nashville today?
It's actually not bad. It's not too cold. Global warming is real and it's beautiful, bro.
That is unfortunately 100% true.
No, it's nice, man. Same old shit.
What kind of work stuff do you have going on in Nashville this week? Anything related to the band or other industry projects?
Well, it's another industry, although it is related to the band. We have a cannabis company, and we have some grows and dispensaries in Oklahoma City. So I came down here because we're working on getting licenses for when it goes legal in Tennessee.
Is that looking like the next in the next round of states to legalize? Is Tennessee at the top of the list? I guess I didn't know. I live in Michigan, so like we just legalized back in November, so I've stopped following the news now.
Yeah, no, Michigan we followed closely too. You never really know, man. Honestly, we get prepared. For if the opportunity is there, and sometimes it may or may not be, but preparation is key because by the time the licenses go out, so many people try to get them, or people especially will try to buy multiple ones to sell them later. So I'm just doing my due diligence.
I understand that. I followed the one here in Michigan quite a bit. It is kind of crazy. I think people assume that so much of that industry, when it gets legalized, that it's just like small business owners in Michigan, but people don't realize that it's like a cash grab that runs around the world, really, that people are just trying to find the right land and find places where they'll be able to set up shop the quickest. It's a lot more, I guess, competitive than I think people believe it to be.
Yeah, it's very disheartening for guys. We've been in the illegal side of the industry, which I guess I'm allowed to talk about now, for over almost about a decade now. We've always grown underground in California, and then when they went legal, we got a license there. And it's tough because we're kind of your typical mom and pop type operation without corporate money, and you're competing with people who have hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars behind them. And like everything else, they're going to fucking ruin it. So we're just trying to, keep some of it in-house and keep the suits and ties at bay. But, man, it's hard to compete when you have, companies like Coca-Cola or, huge smoke tobacco companies buying these things up. It makes it really hard for us. But we're not going to quit, so we'll see what happens.
Now, are you guys the type of artists that are going to roll out some strains that are kind of punny or referential to Hollywood Undead as a group? I know some artists have done that, and I'm surprised that it hasn't really caught on as a bigger trend just yet. Are you guys going to be paving the way?
Well, we've already released strains. We have a strain called Undead OG. The difference between us and everybody else is someone else grows their stuff and just names it after them and gives them some money or something. We grow everything we sell personally. So we actually, from the seed all the way till it's sold or smoked or however people choose to ingest it, it's ours 100% of the way. And I don't know of anybody else who does that.
Just like the music business, it's best if you control as much of it as humanly possible.
It's funny. The music business has a lot of correlation with what's happening in the marijuana industry, because you have a lot of guys, small-time growers who just want to grow, and they're very involved in the cannabis community, and then you have a bunch of people with money who want to capitalize on that. And you could see that especially when major record labels started forming. You have a bunch of artists who just want to make music, and you have people with the money to capitalize on that. And typically the person who ends up getting the worst end of the deal is, in this case, the grower, or the person in the cannabis community, in that case, the artist. So there's actually very striking similarities between the two industries.
So that means you're in the perfect position, because you guys have been in music long enough to understand where the pitfalls are, if you will.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't learn from my mistakes, so we'll see.
I don't think most of us do, unless we make that mistake 3 or 16 times, whatever happens.
I know, yeah, anywhere between 1 and 15 usually. No, we'll see what happens. I mean, it is tough. It's a tough world to compete in. There's no real telling how it's going to go, because obviously music was never illegal unless you lived in like the Soviet Union. But at this point, you're operating in an industry that might be legal in certain states on different levels too. You have medicinal, you have recreational, but nonetheless is still federally illegal. So you're operating in a gray area. And, any day the federal government can say, hey, we're shutting all this down. Now, they won't do that, but you never know what the possibilities or the ramifications are. So kind of like the Wild West in a way. You really don't know what's going to happen from day to day, so you're in a constant state of adaptation, and it makes for an interesting job.
It's one of the few fields where you can actually kind of be an outlaw today without, committing murder or some like serious crime. Like it's still like a cool outlaw kind of.
Wait, say that again, buddy. That broke up just a tad.
Sorry, I said. It is it's probably the only industry where you can kind of be an outlaw still without having to like murder somebody or rob somebody. Like it's still very much like on the verge of being outlaw business kind of types. That's increasingly rare in our world today when everything is commodified.
Yeah, well, I can assure you, there's plenty of people who murdered people in our industry.
Well, that is absolutely
true.
You
have a room. I've sat in the room. I kid you not, with guys who are like stone cold gangbangers and guys with $1 billion. And it's funny because under normal circumstances, these people would never be in the same room. But because of the industry and its nature, you have the underground people who are on the seedier side and have been, operating illegally for a long time. And you have these people who, like I said, capitalize on it. So, and only in that business do I think you see that two meetings of the minds where it's like, under more normal circumstances, except once again with music, in like the rap industry, you got these guys from the streets, and then you got the lawyer with the money, the label head, and normally, obviously, they'd have no direct influence on the other, but you're marrying the two, and it's an interesting algorithm for sure.
Absolutely. And I look forward to hearing more about your efforts in it as these things move forward. I'm actually going to be in Nashville next month. I go there like 3 or 4 times a year for work myself. I have to go to a radio seminar down there. So your work sounds a lot more fun this week than what I'll be up to.
Dude, I've been to those seminars. You guys get fucked up, man. You guys are all jacked up, running around the Hilton or something, in the conference room, hammered.
Oh yeah, it's they call it a showcase, but it's really just it's not. I mean, I guess it is for some artists. I mean, it seems like a necessary part of the process, but it's all just like a thin veil for people to have a good time.
Yeah, they should call it a blow case.
That's brilliant. I guess we should talk about the music thing, since that is what we're on the phone for. You guys do have the new album, New Empire Volume 1, coming out in, what is that, like 2.5 weeks from today? Basically, we're in the 3-week stretch.
Yeah, man, it's exciting. We're excited to finally get it out. There's a lot of lead up to it. For us, it's like, okay, finally we're getting the whole album out there, and it's probably my favorite part of being in a band is that calm before the storm, and then it comes out and people react, and you're kind of like the topic of conversation for 3 days, which is exciting for this. So we're always.
I was reading about how you guys recorded it with this 8-month break kind of between your 2 recording sessions. Now, when people actually hear Volume 1 versus Volume 2, were the tracks, was all of Volume 1 recorded in that first December session, or did you record everything and then split it up after the fact?
No, it was all split up. So like everything that we recorded over the summer, the second session, some of that ended up on the first album. So it wasn't like a mood or conceptually different. We just felt we needed to round the record out better, and you just kind of know when you're done, and when you got a little left, and we all felt like we had a little left. So it was like, let's go till we tap out and make sure that we get everything we can, because you go a couple years between in releases typically, so you want to make sure you get everything out that you can, because you got to wait another 1.5 to 2 years till you could put something else out. So it was important to us to make sure we got everything in there.
Well, I've only heard the first half, but I would say that you seem to have gotten a lot off your chest so far.
Yeah, bro. We that first one is a bit angrier than the second one, I think. I think on the first, you want to come out punching, you want to come out swinging and get people's attention, and so I think we lean more heavily, I guess, on the up-tempo aggressive stuff. Although the second one has its fair share too, but yeah, man, you get one of the cool things about being a musician is it's kind of like therapy, so you everything that's been pissing you off for 18 months, you can finally let out. You just save it up. So instead of seeing a shrink like I should, I just wait those 18 months of complete repression of the emotion and then go into the studio, and there you have it.
Well, there's something therapeutic about stepping into the booth to record vocals, and the door closes or you put your headphones on, and you're in that weird silence of the small space. You're getting out your lyrics, but in a way, you're very much alone with your thoughts for a rare occasion.
It is, it's probably the most introspective you're going to get, because not only are you letting out those emotions, you have to define them with verbiage. So you can't just go, I'm mad, over and over again. You really have to search and kind of dig and vocalize what it is. So there's almost, I think, a therapy involved in that. And I think being forced to confront those things and not just look at them for what they are, but find a way to communicate them, takes it to that next level. And so, I rely very heavily not only on writing music, but listening to music as a distressor and, an emotional crutch. I guess many people do. I'd hate to see what society would look like without music, because it's already ugly enough. But I think music is certainly very important to many people, and I'm not exactly sure where we'd all be without it, but it wouldn't be a good place, I don't think.
Well, let me ask you this. This is a recurring question on the show this year so far, and it's something that's on my mind a lot recently. As somebody who's been in music for as long as you have, going on a decade and a half at this point, when you guys get together and you're like, it's time to do a new Hollywood Undead record, has it become easier or more difficult to write something that you actually want to put out? Has your ability to write something that passes your own test of quality, is it easier or harder the longer you're in music?
I bet you anything that's an individual case by case thing. For me, I think the only challenge is not repeating yourself. We've written and released, 150, 175 songs, something crazy, and you obviously don't want to say the same thing twice. So I think that becomes the only real challenge. But as far as the idealism in music and where you're going to go, I think it's easier now, honestly, because I find that I'm more capable, because it's something you do all the time. You kind of figure out the intricacies as you go, and you become more adjusted to what suits you better and stuff like that. So I would say the overall writing process is easier, although the process of creating something new can be more difficult as time goes on. I would find that the number of artists whose beginning of their catalog quality-wise is better than their second half is probably, you'd see that a lot more than where you see an uptick in quality. So I know that that's a generalized problem, but I think that's just because you run out of, everybody's got a gas tank, and I think eventually that gas tank, you go through it. So I don't think we're there yet, but I'm not going to be in denial. I think it won't come one day where you're like, all right, man, I got to hang my hat up because I'm writing shit.
I remember seeing one of those music satire websites, something like The Hard Times or one of those websites. They ran an article that said, local musician realizes nobody writes good songs after the age of 24. And I think for a lot of people that ends up being true because of that gas tank thing you just said. So what is it about Hollywood Undead, or you specifically as a lyricist, that you think has kept your tank a little bit more full than your peers as time has carried on? It's
going to sound morbid, but it's not. Self-destruction, I think, is the ultimate fuel. And I think as people get older, they tend to mature in different ways. They start to live a different kind of life. They may have children. They may get married. They may settle into a point of comfortability. I think the chaos of youth is what creates that fuel, from not knowing what's going to happen from one day to the next, or the angst of not having your emotional things sorted out. Typically, younger people have deeper-seated issues that they wear on their sleeve. They're not embarrassed about them anymore. Now, and don't get me wrong. I think older people have all these same problems that young people do, but it's not socially acceptable for a 40-year-old to be lost, quote unquote. So I think they start to repress those things, and they have to act like oh, I'm just a normal guy. I got neighbors now. I can't act that way, or whatever the case may be. They put on this mask of normalcy, and they're afraid to act like they're unhappy. I think kids, it's expected. So for me, I've lived kind of just a wacky kind of life, and it's always kept me going. And I think that's part of it. Being self-destructive is certainly a part of it, or self-destructive behavior, and then not being afraid to be emotional, because someone might think you're too old to feel that way. Grow up, and too many people take that advice seriously, and they actually grow up, and it kills the creative gene. Now, that's just my opinion from my observations of people, and I just feel like you got to stay young. You're not going to stay young physically. We're all on the same sinking ship, but you can stay young spiritually or mentally or wherever you consider yourself, where you write from. And I would strongly advise people to not listen to anyone when they tell you to grow up, because that just means get more comfortable dying.
That is very true. I was thinking a lot about songwriting this past week, and talking to a fellow friend in the industry, and he said that the best advice he ever heard for writing songs is, whatever the thing is that you think you shouldn't be writing about is the thing you should be writing about the most. Do you find that that's true for yourself? Yeah? So for this record specifically, I guess, what are the things you had to write about?
I would say that advice is very near the mark. You can't be comfortable when you write songs. If you're comfortable, you're not touching on the things you're supposed to touch about. Your job as a musician is to kind of, like I said, you have to lend a vocabulary to your emotional feelings, right? And in order for someone else who may not write music to feel that, you have to touch on something they feel deeply too, but maybe they can't say, or they feel they can't say, which, in most walks of life is true. If you walked into work one day and said, man, I fucking hate my life, I wish I was fucking dead, not many people are going to want to work with you, even if they have the same reoccurring thought. So with the record, specifically, we have a song called Nightmare on there, for instance, that is a pretty deep song, and it's about, daily life becoming exactly what the song title refers to, a nightmare. And everybody has those moments, and everybody's forced into the scenario where they can't admit it to someone else, and pretty soon they won't even admit it to themselves. But, and everybody has a different version of what that nightmare is, obviously. So a nightmare to someone else might be heaven to me, or vice versa. The idea of living in a cubicle and working like that and going home to, work just to keep the electricity on, and like that kind of normalcy terrifies me, but someone else would love that stability. So, I think you just have to tap into the things that make you uncomfortable. You have to confront the horrors of, your subconscious mind, because we all think things we wish we didn't think. We certainly all feel things we don't wish we felt. And if you're not touching upon those things, I would say you have no business being a musician. That's my opinion. Now, some people like to listen. If you listen to pop music, that's the biggest genre there is, and half the songs are about dancing. Now, a lot of people like to listen to that stuff. Do I? No, because, it doesn't touch on an emotional cornerstone for me. So I'm completely wrong in that sense at the same time, where, hey, look, dude, people want to listen to songs about going to parties and breaking up with their boyfriend and stuff like that. Well, that has no importance to me. It has importance to someone else. But, that's what our field of music, I guess, is dealing with those things. And we leave it to other people to talk about going clubbing and shaking their asses or whatever, all that stuff.
I completely agree with you. It's sometimes it can be hard to find things in the mainstream that take on the substance that it seems artists such as yourself prove over and over again that there's really a demand for and an audience for. But again, you kind of touched on this earlier. You have to be willing to touch into those thoughts and feelings yourself as a listener, even to really engage with that music in a meaningful way. So you guys are putting it out there and finding people who are willing and ready to go on that journey with you, to explore those things that other people may shrug off or try to ignore.
Well, yeah, pop culture obeys the whims of pop society. So if people are uncomfortable with those thoughts and those feelings, they're certainly not going to want to they're going to pay attention to the masses. And if the masses don't want to and be introspective or maybe ask the hard questions, then they're going to give them exactly what they want. That's what pop culture does. It gives in to the immediate whims. But an artist's job is to push boundaries and to make people uncomfortable. So a part of me would say that music like that, I wouldn't even really consider art. I would consider it going to the amusement park or watching a Marvel movie or any of those things. It's just bland entertainment as opposed to the tougher aspects of what art is supposed to do. But everybody has their feelings on those things, and I certainly don't want to appear to be opinionated. But that is how I would feel about those things.
Oh, no, I couldn't agree more. Well, let's, I know I got to wrap this up shortly, but I am curious when you're in the studio, you realize you have 18 songs you want to release. I'm always a big fan of sequencing. So, you referenced Nightmare a second ago. That closes part one of New Empire. So how did you know that was the song you wanted to go out on? And then maybe the bigger question is, how was the discussion around what are we going to release first? What are we going to release second? Like, why did these songs need to be the first ones we heard?
That's funny that you said you love sequencing. That's always the part I hate most when we release an album is, which is partly because I'm in a band and everybody has an opinion and everybody's opinion differs. So sequencing has always been a pain in the ass for us. I don't have like a logical reason Nightmare went last. It was one of those songs that I just knew should go last. It just has that feeling to me, like that's what you want to leave on. And there are songs that you hear and you're like, that's what people need to hear first. I don't really have a logical answer because that's really instinct and feeling that I think you have to make that judgment call on. There's no mathematical process where like, hey, this progression leads better if it goes into this progression on this next song because they're in the same reign or whatever. I'm sure there's people who can do that. It's all gut to me. So I don't have a real good answer to that question, except if you're doing that, I would suggest going with your heart as opposed to your head.
Well, I think that is a fine answer. And can you give me any hint at when we will hear part two of this collection of music?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to wait too long. I honestly would just tell you the date if I knew it. But
well, I love to hear it, man, and I like talking about this stuff with you because you are a guy who has an artistic mind and a business mind, and those are, I think, the most fascinating people because you can see both sides of the coin of what it is to be in the music business these days. So I appreciate you taking the time to kind of talk shop with me a little bit.
Oh no, the appreciation's all mine. I love running my mouth, so anytime I find a willing listener, I'm like a bum, dude. I'll just go tell this shit to people on the street, hoping they listen, but they just think I'm crazy. So I appreciate you listening to me patiently, and I appreciate your insight too. And I know you have valuable opinions yourself, and it was definitely reciprocal. So I appreciate it, man.
No problem. I mean, why else would I have a podcast if I didn't feel the exact same way you did about running my mouth?
That's right, baby.
That's right, baby. All right. Well, you enjoy Nashville, sir, and best of luck with the release. It comes out on February 14th, and hopefully we will maybe speak again soon when we get ready for round two. We'll just do this all over again, but talk about the new stuff.
I'd like that, man. Take care, okay?
Absolutely. You too. Have a great day.